Welcome back to another episode of Sports Den Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hooker, and who I'm here with.
Jackson Bramlett from Mercer University.
And Gabe Stutz, Athens.
All right. So,
And 706, man. Every
right.
day.
Yes, sir.
You love it. You love that little chain. All right. So now let's talk about college football. What did you guys learn from last week of college football?
Gabe, you can go first.
All right. I mean, hey, Kentucky. I don't know. They look like a good team, but they ain't consistent. They ain't got no consistency. And I also learned Ole Miss still got a QB problem.
No, they do.
Those are two biggest things because that was a main game last week. Clemson, they look good too. Playoff contender for sure.
I think Georgia got some questions they need to address because that's 2 straight weeks of suspect, questionable football from what we thought was the number 1 team in the country. Absolute. So I don't know. That's my biggest question. What's going on with you?
What I learned is that it's literally in the SEC West. It's literally Alabama, a big old gap, and then it's the next, and then it's like Arkansas. That's
Well,
why
I don't know, bro. You got to think Tennessee, bro. Tennessee is looking
But
West,
he's
not
in the
the
West.
West bugging.
not
And
the East.
Ole Miss got to be above Arkansas at this point.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't lose 2 games like they did and be in front of undefeated Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's like every year the SEC always it evens out to where it's just Georgia and Bama, just about.
Yeah.
Bro.
but Georgia still has to play Kentucky and Tennessee.
Yeah,
So we don't know how they play because if they played the same way they played against Mizzou against Tennessee or Kentucky, that's an L.
I think it's just having Tennessee at home is going to be big because the way Georgia plays is going to counter the way Kentucky plays. I mean, both of them want to run and they want to, line up and just beat you at the line of scrimmage. But ain't nobody beating Georgia at that. Only team in the country that has the defensive and offensive line recruiting, and not even offensive line. Only team that compares defensive line recruiting is Clemson.
Yeah,
Year in and year out.
that's fast. That's fast. All right, so talk to me about the Kentucky and Ole Miss game. What did you guys see tonight?
I'll let you go
I
first,
saw-
Jack. On.
I saw 2 bad football teams, honestly. Like that fourth quarter had so much sloppy football, so many turnovers. It was like I didn't even think they wanted to win. Like that's not SEC football that I'm used to seeing, and that's definitely not ranked. I don't know what Kentucky's ranked there. They were top 15, but that's not what they should be playing. Like, if that's what they're going to be ranked.
I mean, Kentucky gave that game away. Let's be honest. I mean, Kentucky just gave it away. I mean, turnovers. They just didn't play clean enough. They had every chance to win that game, and they should have won that game really, but they just weren't clean enough. But biggest thing about Ole Miss is I think they still got a QB problem, right? Because they settled in on Dart being their starter, right? But he did not have that great of a game. I mean, what was it? He threw for I think it was under 200 yards, and I think he had an interception. Like
Yeah.
50% completion percentage. I mean, not what you want to see. But that running back core though, and 2 running backs, Zach Evans and what's the other one, the freshman?
Oh yeah, the freshman was getting busy quicker than Zach
Yeah.
Evans. Surprise.
I mean, they got a good 2 running backs. That's gonna be hard for anybody to compare to.
Yeah. I mean, what I learned is like Matt Corral was Ole Miss last year, so they had to like start using their pieces more and more, and they have to like incorporate new things because Matt Corral, you could tell Matt Corral play and he'll come up with something in the middle of the huddle, but now it's like you got to increment little stuff so other guys can understand what their role is and stuff like that. But like you said, the running tandem for Ole Miss is probably like top 3 in the SEC.
I mean, if we're talking just your top two running backs. I mean, it's got to be, I think, at least top 5, 6 in the country. I mean, now they're
Yeah,
definitely better running backs than those two, but when you're talking about those two, I mean, maybe Ohio State might be the only one that's really got two running backs like that.
yeah. Ohio State, oh, like Ohio State, their offense is like breeds NFL players.
Yeah,
That's
except for quarterback, but I think that could change. I like Stroud.
yeah, I like him too.
I mean, Ohio State offense, like you said, like it's set up to make the quarterback look good. Like, when's the last time you've seen a quarterback go to Ohio State and look bad? Come on, straight lead shot. Maybe Cardell Jones, like even him, he even got his chance in the league. He came in end of the year. So I mean,
Yeah,
they got a good system over there.
yeah. I think Ohio State really wide receiver. If there was no LSU, it's hard because like the way they recruit now,
Yeah, no, the
like
way they recruit now, I mean, yeah.
it's crazy. Like
In
they
like 5 years, no reason
literally
they
they had
shouldn't be.
Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and JSN. Then you still have Marvin Harrison Jr. Like
Julian Fleming too.
yeah, Julian Phillips, all them people, and they're all like JSN is probably like 6 foot, but think of Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison like 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah,
He
he,
runs 4'4".
But if you talk about like wide receiver U in terms of what they're doing in NFL, like right now, not historically, I mean, you got Jefferson and Chase. I mean, it's hard
Yeah,
to compete with.
that's it. Like LSU, yeah, and then Alabama, like
yeah. I was gonna say, would I be wrong to say put Alabama in that conversation? Because like,
I mean, it's not wrong. It's like
No.
Alabama you can put Alabama anywhere except for quarterback.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you right. Because that's
Like,
the one thing they're not gonna give you.
like they're not
Okay, right now, all right, as of right now, I guess that's invalid because like they had three hot quarterbacks in the league at the time, but like before these three, like Mac, Tua, and I'm not even gonna say Mac before Tua and Jalen, like
no.
But
I
it,
wouldn't even say Jalen. I'll say
yeah,
Jalen
because
Oklahoma.
you call Jalen Oklahoma or Alabama.
yeah,
I
I'll
call
say
him.
I'll say Jalen's Oklahoma because
Yeah, I gotta say Oklahoma.
yeah,
Now they get more credit. Alabama gets more credit for Jalen than Ohio State does for Burrow, but who you got drafted from is who you gotta be
yeah,
represented by.
exactly. That's why I don't know. All right, the next game. Talk to me about Alabama Arkansas.
mm,
Jalen Milroe is electric. That's the first thing I'm gonna start off with. I mean, he's electric, right? I mean, running the football, he's there. He's already there. Um, Gibbs, Gibbs looked like what they wanted him to be and what people thought he would be. I mean, he had those two 70 yarders in the fourth. So Gibbs was looking good. Still some questions about wide receiver core, right? They actually had if you look at team stats, they didn't have necessarily a bad game, but they had like three big chunk plays. And other than that, that's where they got all their yards from. So,
oh, I was gonna say like when I saw Bryce, because like I didn't get to physically watch the Bama game, but when I got the notification that Bryce went down and like he wasn't coming back to the game, first thing that came to head was like, oh, is Bama done? Like, you know, Bama's getting like people like to say Bama gets saved and stuff, but like you said, like this Miro dude, Jalen Monroe came in the game, you know, electric, gives the running back. I think when I checked the stat sheet, second half, he broke 270-yard runs, bro.
yeah.
Like
And I think they were both in the fourth.
I think Bama has a team they need to get where they need to be. If you put Bama in the Natty and give Saban an opportunity to win a Natty, he's going to compete. And sadly, I see them possibly making it back this year.
I mean,
Early take. Early take.
nah, from what I'm saying, I say is that Alabama showed me that they like Bryce is not their savior. Like they have a capable backup who can come in. If
Yeah.
Bryce goes down, they'll be okay. They'll be afloat because Dylan Monroe, he's a better runner than Bryce. Like
Yeah.
I saw when he did a little check down. I don't know if it was quarterback draw or whatever it was. He ran diagonal like this, horizontal, and still outran cornerbacks, defensive backs, and all their safeties. Like he was moving, and then you still have Jameer Gibbs. I don't know. I see some people say that Jameer Gibbs is an RB1 in the draft class now after the Arkansas game, which I won't knock it, but
I see him as like a flex back in the league, because Kamara's not getting 15, 20 carries a game no more like he used to. He's versatile. Like I feel like that's what's succeeding in the league right now. Clyde came to the Chiefs as an RB1, supposed to be first, second, third down back. Dude had 3 carries last game, like receiving yards all throughout the air. Like NFL is changing. It's changing.
You can't put anyone over Bijan. I mean, there is no better running back that's about to come out. And I'm having a hard. I wouldn't put Brees Hall or Javante above Bijan.
Oh, that's my boy. That's my boy, Gabe. I love Bijan. What's up, Justin?
Yo, what's good? What's good? What's good?
all right, Justin, tell the people your thoughts about the Bama Arkansas game since you're the Bama fan.
It was the only I think people are kind of overreacting. I won't lie. I think, of course, Bryce Young is the scariest thing. Like he's out for right now for what we've seen, but they've already been posting videos in practice of receivers catching balls, and they're not showing the quarterback. And to me, that leads me to believe that Bryce Young is going to be okay. So I think that was the biggest thing of that game. But I think what that game showed is that Alabama can still run the ball when they need to. They do have a lot of guys who can make a big play, which is what really boosted them because they had, 2 70-yard runs by Jameer and then the big run by Jalen Milroe. But it still shows that Alabama can still run the ball when their quarterback is not in the game, when things aren't going well, which is all you really need to get by Texas A&M. Honestly, their defense isn't great and their quarterback isn't good either. So there's no point in playing a running game with them. You can literally run the ball on them and still win that game. So even if Bryce Young doesn't play on Saturday, I'm not too scared. But overall, I think people are overreacting. If you go watch that game, the only quarter Alabama struggled was the third quarter. After that, it blew open again. So I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. But I will say the only thing that has scared me so far is Alabama's defense in terms of DBs. There you can see where the holes are, and to me, it's like the middle of the field. Like our linebackers and safeties are not covering.
Spoken like a true Bama fan.
Imagine if Bama still had Drew Sanders to go with Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. Now, obviously, he wasn't playing at Bama, but if he was on the field at Bama and you had Will Anderson on one side and you have Drew Sanders on the other, that would be not fair.
But it's like when I see Bryce Young go down, I was disappointed in Arkansas not taking full advantage of just like taking over the game. Like, yeah, you scored 23 unanswered, but wow, how couldn't you take the lead from them? Because your defense gave you everything you needed, but you still couldn't get the lead and hold on to it in front of a sold out crowd. So I was disappointed that. And
have you talked about Georgia yet? Because there's no way you're on us like that.
Oh, brother.
Georgia.
We're not talk about them right now.
There's no way y'all are on Bama
we
like
know
this.
that. We know Georgia got some problems they need to address, and we're going to leave it at that for now.
Okay, so do you guys think that Bryce Young will play this week?
I'm not going to lie. I think he does.
No.
I don't think he does.
They came out and they said it's going to be a
Tennessee.
game time decision. No, you don't absolutely need Bryce, but I think they still do put him out there to see what it looks like. They said, I didn't know this, but Saban came out and said that this is an injury that Bryce has actually had before and dealt with before. No one ever knew. So if it seems like something he can get through after that, and they're saying it is what it is, a shoulder sprain, and it's not nothing more, because we know Saban will go up there and cap it up, bro. I won't lie. Like, he will lie to us for sure and let you know that everything is great, and it's not. But I truly, at this time, I actually do believe him that it doesn't look as bad as it seemed. He kept his shoulder pads on whenever he came back after the game. The only thing they took from him was the helmet. And then there was a point in the third quarter where they looked like they're about to throw him back out there because it wasn't looking great. So I think he does come out and play, but let this game get out of hand. Even in the second quarter, short lease, he's gone. Like, we're no risk. Like, if Bama is up 21 points by the time it's getting close to halftime, you might see Jalen Milroe in the second quarter. Like, honestly.
So what are your thoughts on Milroe?
Milroe can do as good as Bill O'Brien coaches. That's about it. Because Bill O'Brien is oh my God, I can talk about Bill O'Brien's offensive coordinating for ages. Like, this man has no type of set plan for any game that he goes into at any given week. It is the same thing. It is, we're going to try to run the ball. When that doesn't work, we're just going to live on the back of Bryce Young. And that's literally all this offense is, week in and week out. We don't have any receivers that have stood out as the guy that you can just go to over and over and over, or as a guy that can be a safety blanket for a guy like Jalen Milroe. Because in comparison, I compare Milroe to kind of like Blake Sims or maybe Jalen Hurts in his first year. Like, he was mostly running. He has a big arm and he can throw, but in terms of accuracy and reading defenses, he isn't all the way there yet. So you just can't rely on him like that. So, one, they got to start getting him going in the short passing game first. If you're going to get him passing, start short first. It can't be either a run play or we're throwing 15 yards. I don't get why that's the only two options, why every pass play has to be down the field. You can throw short 4 or 5 yard passes and let your guys run because we have athletes, especially like Jahmyr Gibbs. And then after that, then you have to incorporate that read option and let him run a little bit, man. Like, they were letting him run, but only to an extent. And that's when he broke the big one, and then they really started letting him run to me. So you have to prepare for that type of game, a game that could be a slow-played game, could be a run-the-ball in defense and stuff like that. But at the same time, if you're going to get him passing, start short and then move on from there. Bill O'Brien just has to get creative. He has to figure out to do something different than the obvious normal. Like, it blows my mind. But Milroe, as an arm talent, just like I said.
I want to, touch on something because you're talking about how you got to let your athletes really make the plays. Like, don't make it hard on Jalen Milroe. And, I feel like UGA, personally, I feel like they've been doing that a lot more with Darnell this year. Like, we've really been seeing, what the hype's been about. Because, last 2 years, Darnell ain't really done nothing. I mean, he was on the field, but, we wasn't throwing it to him. I feel like we really – Darnell's going to be a first-round draft pick, possibly, just because of the potential there is lined up in his career, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I agree. He's, 6'8", 6'7"? Like, bro, that's hard to beat. And him and Brock Bowers, tight end-wise, weapons, great. That I think is the same thing as Bama. You have some good weapons. Bama has the running backs. We got Jahmyr Gibbs. We got Jace McClellan. I don't talk about Trayshawn Holden. He is not a weapon. I do not care. He is not the guy. Ja'Cory Brooks and Isaiah Bond and Kobe Prentice, sure. But, a lot of those other guys, I'm not saying Burton either. No. So, so to me, it's the weapons aren't great, but I think Georgia's the same way. The weapons aren't great. You rely on mostly tight ends. Alabama relies on mostly running backs.
Okay. For the Georgia Mizzou game, everyone gets their own speech about the game. Who wants to go first? Okay. Everyone go on mute, and we're not going to say nothing.
Okay, I'm muting because I will say something.
Go, Gabe.
All right,
your thoughts on the game?
Georgia's still a playoff team. Look, right? The Georgia we saw against Oregon, against South Carolina, that's really who, at its core, Georgia is. And it comes down to leadership, right? All it is in that game is Georgia does not have anyone right now who is going to step up and wake them up to go play Missouri, right? From Missouri, that's their night game. They're playing the number one team in the country, right? I don't want to say that's their Super Bowl, but to some extent, that's what it is. I mean, they're just like anyone who comes to play Bama. I mean, they're going to give them their best game, right? And a lot of the mistakes Stetson made, it falls on the offensive line, right? I think all Georgia's struggles on offense last week came down to the offensive line. Until
Mhm.
the fourth quarter, they couldn't get any push running the ball, right? I mean, when we broke one, Kendall Milton fumbled. Stet's having to throw off his back foot, so he's throwing it high. I mean, he's throwing it high to 6'8" Darnell Washington, right? I mean, that's hard to do. And I think if Georgia can have someone step up and be a leader, then I think the sky's the limit. And I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, on defense, I mean, they still look good, right? Outside of a couple plays, I mean, they locked Missouri down. I mean, there was a couple miscommunications they need to get shored up, and it also, how long is Jalen Carter out? That's a big deal because all the other guys on defensive line just complimentary pieces right now. I hate to say that, but that's what they are. If you can get Jalen Carter in there to plug the middle, it changes Georgia's defense a lot.
Okay.
So.
All right. I'm going next. 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 Okay. Okay. First off, Mizzou, hell of a game. I'll give y'all that. It was the crowd was in it. The quarterback was playing great. With Georgia, your offensive line was getting beat. Y'all were supposed to be like this great offensive line that we can trust and depend on to give us some push. And now it's just like we couldn't get that. And I'll talk about our running back room real quick. Why is DeJuan Edwards playing the fourth quarter is outperforming Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton, and it was like you guys supposed to have the keys this year, but you're making DeJuan Edwards look like he can start this week against Auburn. It's like I have to call out Kendall Milton because you're supposed to be that guy this year. Like Kenny was supposed to be like a Sony Michel, and you were supposed to be Nick Chubb. We have not seen you get a game over 15 yards in how long? Like, that's what I have to get. And then the defense, the secondary, it looked suspect last week because it was like the safeties in the corners, they didn't know they were like, because the wheel route but by the tight end against that touchdown, I just sat there, I was like, literally, there was three guys covering a crossing route, and the safety just standing there in no man's land. And it's like, it's crazy because, like, we're supposed to say our secondary is really coming up, and like our secondary is really good. I was like, no, bro, like we're still young, and like I think Keely Ringo was getting beat. Like he got beat on the deep ball one time. I was like, whoa, that's when I knew we're in it for a game. But and then all in all, Georgia just need a defensive outspoken leader because as you saw last year, it was N'Kobe. Years before that, it was Roquan Smith. Now it's like, we don't know who it is. Like all guys are great talents, right? But we don't have a great leader right now. And so I don't know. I was just looking at them. I was just disgusted in my TV screen by the score as a fan. But I was telling to myself what Jack posted. Jack had said, "Please don't ruin my Saturday," and I felt that because like if Georgia would have lost, my Saturday would have been ruined. I would have talked to nobody. I would have to talk to nobody. I would have felt that. But all in all, we can't always depend on Darnell and Brock to get us going. We have to find some other ways to incorporate the run game better. And that's it. Who wants to go next? I'll let Jack go. Jack go. I think Justin's gonna have a lot to say on us since we're on Bama head.
All right. First off, yeah, hell of a game, Mizzou. Y'all, like y'all said, y'all gave us our best, and like, I'm gonna put it like this: like, last year Mercer went to Bama, like they gave Bama their best. So like, when you put SEC athletes against just as good of SEC athletes, like you gotta expect a good game. Like Georgia did not go into Missouri locked in at all. They didn't. Lad McConkey, he's been shaky last 2 weeks. I don't know what's up with him. Besides Brock Bowers, I'd like to say Lad's favorite target because like, we haven't been really utilizing anybody else this year. It's been Lad, Brock, Darnell. Oh, maybe we'll dump it to Kenny. Like, I think Georgia needs to try to expand their offense a little bit more because Stetson's not good enough to be running the same damn plays every game. That's not going to get Georgia a championship. It's not. We don't have that Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb running down your throat running back this year. We don't have it right now. We don't have it. So offensively, I don't know. They need to find themselves. I think they really need to find themselves as a team. Last year, we can all agree, defense definitely got Georgia that natty. Georgia, offensively, they did not. They didn't earn it. I want to say it was more so handed to them that they just didn't have to mess it up. And Stetson didn't mess it up. This year, our defense is not what it was. We don't have a Jordan Davis. As of right now, we don't have a Jalen Carter. Keely Ringo, he's not. I don't know. He's not giving me what he's supposed to be giving me. Young cornerback Kamar last year started his first couple games. Malachi starts. Yeah, he's playing good, but he's still young. Georgia has a lot of gaps. A lot of gaps. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm done.
But before Justin starts, I'll say this: all championships teams go through it. They'll go through this growing pain phase.
Yeah.
Yes, we were bad. Bama last year they lost to TSM. We wrote Bama off, and Bama still made it to the national championship. And I'll say this: yes, these little cupcake games that people think they are cupcake, they're really not. Because if you can overlook one team in the SEC, they can show you their best, like Mizzou did. Justin?
That's one of the few things I'll agree with, too. And I agree with, okay, so I'll address a bunch of things. Okay, so first thing I agree with, yes. I said this in my podcast at the helm. I said the second tier of SEC teams has gotten so much better. It's ridiculous. There's so many teams that can play spoiler this season if Alabama and Georgia don't do what they're supposed to do. I still don't think you can sleep on Florida. I don't think you can sleep on LSU. I don't think you can sleep on Mississippi State. A&M, Arkansas, you couldn't sleep. Arkansas, you couldn't sleep on at one point. Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, all these teams are teams that you could definitely slip up against. That is not just you write on the schedule of oh yeah, we got our dub that week already because we're who we are and they're who they are. A lot of these teams have gotten a lot better, which is crazy to me. Because for a long time it was LSU, Auburn, and Florida every once in a while pop up, but most of all it was just Georgia and Bama back and forth. And now that second tier has gotten better. So I agree with that. This you cannot just bypass the rest of the SEC anymore and think it's easy. And this is why the SEC is the best conference. But on top of that, I do think that Georgia, like Jackson said, has a lot of holes. And Gabe was it's just the O-line. I don't think it's just the O-line. I agree with Jonathan. O-line and DBs. And this is something I did on my show too. I ranked the 3 positions that I think Georgia is lacking in the most. I said O-line right now. Missouri, and this is why the Kent State game was important. Kent State gave people somewhat of a recipe of what you need to do against a team like Georgia in order to have success. Kent State just didn't have the athletes and the talent to be able to fully capitalize and beat a team like Georgia, and they probably won't ever unless Georgia throws 3 picks in that game, honestly. So I think that they showed that, okay, if you blitz Georgia and force Stetson to run around more than he wants to and throw some crazy passes, he might throw a pick, he might fumble. And then on top of that, Georgia's O-line isn't good enough for them to just pound the ball down your throat, like you said. They don't have a running back. And I would say they didn't even have a running back that you can consider like that last year. It hasn't been since Chubb and Swift not Chubb, Michelle, and then Swift afterwards. To me, it hasn't been since Swift that Georgia, you could just see a running back that's just we put this guy in, we run straight, and we win this game. There's nobody there right now. And the second position group I said was the DBs. Them DBs were lacking. Lassiter got beat a few times. Chris Smith got beat a few times. Ringo was getting beat. To me, a lot of that I'll give somewhat of excuse of because it seems to me like Georgia's just young. Those DBs are not in the right place. It's not like they're not great players. They're just not in the right position. And Georgia runs a zone defense, which can get confusing for young DBs. And I used to see this happen with Alabama when Kirby Smart was our defensive coordinator. That defense that Kirby Smart runs is complicated. I won't lie. It's not easy for you to just pick up. You're not just playing man coverage. There's a lot of times you're passing off receivers and this guy gets this and gets him. If they go in motion, we do this. There's a ton of adjustments that is just hard for you to fully learn unless you're playing. And right now, Georgia is getting their first true test to me. Oregon, I don't care. They had Bo Nix. We all know what Bo Nix is. Bo Nix is a pick machine. He is going to give the ball up, and you're going to win because of that. So I don't count Oregon as the first true challenge. Kent State showed her little recipe. Missouri used that recipe, said, okay, these DBs aren't always in the right place. We have some athletes who can go out there and exploit that. And I forget the receiver's name. It was like number 7, number 8 was going stupid. But
Yeah,
he was definitely having a great time. And then that tied in too. And then after that, the last position I said was Georgia's offensive weapons. And that's in overall. The running backs, like I just said, there's not a guy in that room that you can just be like, okay, this is our guy, and we're going to stick with him and run the ball straight down someone's throat, or we can close out a game with this guy when it's tough and we need to run the clock out. I don't see any of those guys. Edwards might be the closest one right now, which is crazy because, like you said, it's supposed to be Milton and McIntosh. And then after that, if you're relying on Ladd McConkey as your number one receiver, you're out of your mind. You're a crazy man. I do not see it. I said this last year before the SEC championship. Remember, I told you, I was like, I don't see the receivers for Georgia. Stetson is doing a solid enough job with guys like Brock Bowers and throwing to his running back that he doesn't have to rely on those receivers all the time. Ladd McConkey can get open because no one's paying attention to him. And now people are paying attention to him, and Ladd McConkey can't get open. He's an okay receiver to me at best. Georgia has to rely on their tight ends a lot. They're going to have to figure out a way to either develop some of those receivers so that they get better pretty fast, or find a way to get a little bit creative with Todd Monken on the offensive side and get those running backs out in space, make them catch passes, or make the tight ends catch passes, like in other ways. But I will say this. The recipe for Georgia, if you blitz and their O-line isn't that great, now what do you force Georgia to do? Running backs and tight ends have to stay in and block, which means they're not out catching passes, and the receivers aren't great either. Stetson's by himself.
Yeah, that's where we fall to SEC play. Big boy football against big boy football. Non-conference, we show we can be dominant, but now it's time to wake up. Well, that's the end of segment 1. Segment 2 is coming up. We're gonna have the rise of Kansas State and Kansas. California schools, they're both undefeated, both in top 25, and we're gonna talk about Oklahoma's downfall. See you guys on next segment. Peace.